Hello. Thank you all for joining us. Sorry we were a few minutes late. We had a few technical difficulties. We're so happy that you guys came to join us today. I'm going to introduce us all. I'm Linda Whitaker, the president of our local Sisters in Crime Writers Organization. Today we're going to talk to you about tips, tools, and technology for getting that first draft started, for starting up writing. And we have till 2:30, but I think we'll plan on we can stay a little longer if we need to, unless they kick us out. Yes, okay, we can. So, okay, so this is our agenda today. We're going to start off with introductions. I'm going to just spend a few minutes on what is NaNoWriMo, as we set this up as if you want to try to write a novel in a month. Then we'll go through how do you get that novel out. How can you use library research to make sure your writing's more factual? For those of us in Sisters in Crime, or actually, if you write any story, if you get anything wrong, your readers are going to tell you about it in a second. So don't say radar when you mean echolocation. That's the last one I got. Not the same, right? And then we're going to talk about writing applications, some tried and true Word versus some of the newer ones, like Scrivener, and other applications you might use. These are ways to speed up your writing because it takes such a long time. And then we'll do Q&A, and hopefully have lots of time for Q&A. So I guess I'm just going to do a quick show of hands, though. Is it anybody here kind of working or thinking? Are you working on your first novel? Are we for any newbies, beginners? Yes? Good. Okay, awesome. I know we've got a few representatives from our group who are esteemed authors, so I know that they are not, but maybe we can teach them some new tricks in terms of technology. Awesome. Anything? Just start up? I think we're good. So our speakers today, Marty, I didn't get you on. I'm so sorry. It's on the other one. So I'd like to introduce first Alice Fidler, who's a past president of Upstate Sisters in Crime. She writes wonderful novels of suspense, tied in with heart. So suspense with heart, some thrillers, some thrilling suspense. She has 2 series that she's written, and she's going to talk to us initially about how to get work on that draft. Marty Kraft is here from the library. In my other presentation, I wrote his bio. Apologies. You've been here about 7 years, is that right?
I've been in the system for about 7 years. I've been in my current position in the reference department for about 4 years. I got my first degree at UIC, University of Illinois in Chicago, and then I got my master's in library science at University of Illinois.
Great. So. Alice, you want to say anything else about yourself? You're good? Intro? Okay. We also have Sally Hanley over there, another past president of our local Sisters in Crime group. She's the author of a mere 6 novels. She's got a Holly and Ivy cozy mystery series and a standalone, Stop the Threat. Me, I'm Linda Whitaker. I'm the current president. I write action thrillers that have an underpinning of science and technology, which is where I spent most of my working career in technology. Hence, I'll be talking mostly about technology today and let these ladies talk about, more of how the writing, because they're the more experts. I have 1 published book out, and I'm working on my 2nd for this year. So, all right. So what is Sisters in Crime? We've mentioned it a few times now. It's an international community of writers. It's an inclusive community. Some writing organizations, they want you to be published authors and do all this before you can join or really join. And Sisters in Crime is not like that. It's for everybody. If you've written 1 word or you've written 30 novels. It is geared a little bit towards crime fiction, thrillers, suspense, but we have a lot of people in there who aren't even writing that, who are writing memoirs and things, just because it's such a wonderful writing community. So it's my little sell for Sisters in Crime. I encourage you to jump online if you go online, and we've got some information up here, it'll just tell you a little bit about the national organization and what they offer. What we do here in our group is we like to get expert speakers, interesting speakers to come. And this is just an example of what we've done kind of this year, where we've got Phoenix, the arson dog, to come give us a demo. We talked to like the 911 operator. We've had people, an FBI special agent who went undercover tell us about what that was like. So if any of that seems fun and cool to you, that's kind of the stuff that we do. Some of the other chapters focus more on writing craft. We do a little bit, obviously, today. But so if you look, Sisters in Crime really is something for everybody. It's not just showing speakers, it's not just craft, it's a really good community, it's a good, inclusive, welcoming community of people who just want to help each other succeed. It really is about that, which is a nice thing. It's really nice. So, I miss anything, ladies? Okay, I think it's 35 years old also, 35 years old this year. And our group here is more than 20 years old. So it's a nice established organization. All right. Okay, so what's NaNoWriMo? So this is some crazy group started in 1999 as a challenge to get writers going, and their challenge was to write 50,000 words of a novel, which is not an entire novel usually, but it's a good start, in November. And our workshop today is not only for NaNoWriMo, but we're going to be focusing more on that first draft. How do you write a draft? There's so much more to writing once you get that thing down on paper. Editing, publishing, revising, but we're not focusing on that today. It's really how do you get that thing out, spew it out onto paper. Okay, but if you're interested in NaNoWriMo, you can go look it up, and you can participate as much or as little as you want. If you actually do the official rules, which are pretty limited, those 3 rules here, where you're going to work in November and really want you to plan beforehand, but they want you to try to do it there. Then they have prizes and things like that, but it's just an effort to help people feel good. So if you have a novel you've been working on for 3 years and you want to try to get it done, just go ahead and do it too. Right? So that's my plug for NaNoWriMo. I usually fall apart and can't do it, so I'm not a successful example of doing it, but if you wanted to give it a go check out their website. Yeah. All right. So Alice is waiting with bated breath. So we're going to talk now about that. That's really our intro. How would you start? You have an idea for a novel. How would you start and get it out?
First, I should tell you that writing a novel, even a draft in a month, is something I have never done. The shortest time I ever took was 2 years. The first book took me 8 years. But this really is good. It's inspiring me putting this together. I think I would like to try again. First, to get your idea. These are things you can think about getting ready for the month that you'll really go to it. Decide on the type of story you want to write, whether it's mystery, romance, slice of life, science fiction. It can be anything, because the same basic ideas apply, no matter what kind of book it is. Even if you're writing a memoir, some of the things will be the same. What do you like to read? If you've already got an idea, you're ahead. But if you don't, there are lots of sources for ideas. Newspaper articles, trade or subject magazines, Archaeology Today, even the old, what was it called? Romance Today or something like that. The issues are still online, and you can get ideas from them. Some of them are bizarre, but they can work. And
Reddit today.
You did?
Just plug in Reddit.
Oh, Reddit? Okay. I didn't know about that. And you can watch movies or documentaries, and you won't make it exactly what you're seeing or reading, but you put enough of yourself into it and make changes so that there is no plagiarism, a big sin, when you copy someone else's work. But everything is different. If you write it and put yourself into it, it will be different. There are only a limited number of basic themes. You can look those up online if you want to, if you're completely new. You can use life events, but if you use real people, make sure it's noticeably different so that they can't sue you for libel or, end your friendship forever, whatever. And I prefer to start with characters usually, but many people start with the plot. It depends on how you write, what appeals to you first. I keep a notebook of my characters. I learned after my first book that when on page 200 she had gray eyes, and by 300 she had green eyes. So it's better to keep up with these little details and start off with 2 or 3 characters, including the antagonist or the villain. They need just as much of a personality and story as the main characters. And the antagonist is not necessarily a villain. You can have 2 good people, but with opposing goals. And that usually makes a strong story. Start with a police description. Height, weight, color of hair, eyes, body type, anything, distinguishing marks. That's always a good place to start, but you don't use it all at once. Just drop it in as you need it. Never look in a mirror and have your character describe himself or herself. How many of us do that? Say, "Oh, I love my blonde hair and my blue eyes," or "I need to lose a little weight." But whatever, just drop it in as other people would see you or as it pertains to the story. The other thing is their education. You want to know what kind of education they have. Maybe they were a homeless child and barely literate, or they might be a university professor or a doctor, whatever, but know their education and their work. If they're old enough to work and have a job, what do? A waitress, a lawyer, a police officer? Then you better know what you're doing, though. If you write about a profession, you need to either experience it or have a very good, tolerant friend who will help you. Because the first thing readers see is the mistake. They skip the good parts and they say, "But on page 32, you said this." And it never fails. You want to know the characters' hobbies, their special interests, and in particular, any skills that they have. Like David was very good with a slingshot. Otherwise, David would never have beaten Goliath. It was his special skill, which in a story you would know ahead, at least hinted that he had a skill that he could use. You want to know their background. Did they have a happy childhood? Were they abused? Did they come from 7 children? What of 7? Maybe that character has a need to stand out. But whatever it is, you should know it, even if you don't use it. You drop in all this kind of information in little bits where it's pertinent to what's happening in the story. And how do they speak? Are they educated? Do they use a lot of slang, which you should really limit? It gets old fast. Try not to write in dialect, because it's so hard to read for readers. You can usually do it with syntax or something rather than dropping letters. That really makes it difficult on the reader. If you use gestures, like your heroine fidgets, but don't let her always twirl her hair around her finger, because they'll be ready to cut it off before that's over. And then the most important is, what does your main character want? They must want something badly and have a good reason for it, something that affects them personally. You know, we might all like world peace, but that's not much of a basis for a story. Bad decisions make good stories. And you want the bad people, or the people on the opposing side, to also have a strong reason for what they want. Why are they like they are? What happened in their lives to make them mean, generous, good, kind, interesting? Whatever they are, you need to know what motivates them, because that's really what's going to drive the story, how they react to different situations. Sometimes these reasons are internal, usually, but they can be influenced by external factors. Like if one of them has an abusive spouse, it might change what they're doing and how they react to things, and what their motivation for the story is. If it's a murder, always the character wants to live. That's a big one. But why is the setting so important? What in the situation makes it matter so much personally? So once you've got your idea for your characters, then you move on to the plot, or the other way around, however you happen to think. In a plot, it's the story that moves, it's the action that moves the story. And everything should be based on what happened before. Every scene is a cause, and the next scene results in what happened in the one before. Aristotle said, it makes a great difference whether something happens because of something else or merely after it. It needs to have cause and effect. And don't worry about having an original idea. Everything has been done on the basic level. It's how you present it and how you write it that makes it unique. Harry Potter, Oliver Twist, and Cinderella have the same basic theme, but they were treated quite differently and are very different stories. Know where your story's going. What is the point of the story? What's going to happen? Are you going to catch the killer, win the fair maiden, destroy the evil empire? Whatever works for your story, you need to know what you're aiming at, what's going to happen. And then you have to find the setting that works for your plot. You know, if you have an architect that builds skyscrapers, chances are you want it in a big city. If not, you better have a good reason for it, not a big skyscraper in a remote area. It can be a distant planet. World building is not easy. If you write science fiction, it takes a lot of planning. Most novels have three basic parts: the opening, the middle, and the end. In the opening, this is where you always have trouble, most people. Don't set it up first. Start with something happening that will make the reader want to know more. Introduce your character, a significant character. You can start with the villain if you need to. Most of us start with the main character. Introduce the character so that the reader has someone to care about and care what's going to happen, how they're going to resolve this initial problem. You start with something that's in conflict, where there are opposing goals, where the main character or the antagonist has to achieve something. And don't let it happen. It's that suspense that keeps the story going. You need to tell in the opening where your story's taking place, like if it's Saturn in 2025, or if it's Atlanta today. You don't have to have the date, but whether it's a current story or historical novel, whatever it is. Don't leave people wondering about things like that. And what else? The opening should show a change in the main character's current situation, a change in the status quo. I don't care what they're doing today if nothing's happening. Nobody cares. Limit the description in the beginning. Start with an interesting event that affects the main character. You know, if it's a murder, maybe it's somebody's sister, if you want to start with the murder. Whatever it is, make it something the reader was going to care what happens to the main character. The tone of the book is established in the opening scene. If it's going to be humorous, drama, serious, whatever it is, you don't want to pick up a book. If you're in the mood, say you've had a bad day, you want to read something fun, you don't want to open it with tragedy and then find out it's going to be a humorous book. You want to know what you're starting out with. So you establish the tone right away. Then you come to the middle, after you get through the initial parts, with things always built on what happened before. The middle is the graveyard of many books, I should know. I have a cemetery in my desk. But in the middle, the reader's getting kind of dreary, and so are you probably. What's next? What's next? Make something happen that changes everything. You know, if it's a romance, you can bring in an old lover, or the spouse you thought was deceased in the war comes back, just as someone's getting ready to find a new partner. Whatever it is, it needs to make a big change, something that the reader can really pick up on, and it wakes up, ready to read. Now what's happening? What's next? The idea is to keep the reader's interest. Think up some major events that you could have in your story, because you're not really writing yet. But you might just jot down some ideas, whether you have the house burn, you dry up the only water hole left, whatever it is, kill somebody, blow something up. Just do something that makes a big change in the direction of the story and that the characters must react to according to their personalities and what their goal is. If you have a subplot, the subplot must affect the main character and her life or his life. If it's unrelated and doesn't affect the major story, then why do you need it? That's another story or another book. Subplots must affect the main character or the main plot. If it doesn't, either revise it or get rid of it. And then the ending, the last part, make it big. They've been reading all these pages of your book to get to it. This is what they've been waiting for. It should be satisfying. It doesn't have to be what they might think is going to happen, but they need to feel that people get their just desserts and that everyone's getting what they deserve. You can surprise them, but it has to fit. And do you know what Deus Ex Machina is? Divine intervention. We cannot have the murderer ready to strike the hero, and he has a heart attack and dies. The main character must initiate the final resolution of the story. He must be the one most affected by the outcome, and it should be that story. There have to be logical events that lead up to the ending. You can't just suddenly have a meteor crash into the city and everything's over. You have to give the reader little hints. You don't have to tell it, spell it out, but you have to give hints and drop ideas along the way so that it's a logical outcome. Truth may be stranger than fiction, but it's not always logical. Fiction must be logical. And that's mine.
So in general, like she said, one of the things you're going to need to do when you're writing is make sure that all of your information is very factual, based on reality. So even though it's fiction, within the world you're creating, you're going to want all of the information to be credible. So if you're talking about a medical issue, then you're going to want to describe that properly. If you're going to want to talk about court proceedings, you're going to want to make sure that they happen in, like she was saying, a logical timeline. So all of these little aspects of your story can require tons of research. So getting in the habit of, I think I might want my character to do this, I want my setting to be in this way, is going to be research. If it's historical, you're going to need to go into some historical research. If it's medical, financial, legal, political, all of those topics have very specific things. So it's jargon. It's the way people within a profession speak to each other. It's the way a doctor would speak to a patient rather than a nurse. So those are the details that will make your story come to life. Where there's always one that I'll remember. When I was younger, I read this story. It was about a doctor who was the best surgeon in the hospital, and his wife had diabetes. I have diabetes, so it was very relatable for me. He was killing all of his coworkers' patients after their surgery by giving them too much insulin. And then he was the best surgeon in the hospital, and then his wife slowly figured out what was happening. Then he tried to kill her the same way. It was a very interesting story for me. But what I realized later in life was the way they described diabetes was dead on. I actually had some questions from my doctor based on what I had read in the story, because there's strength of insulin. Most people would just have the standard strength, and then it doubles each time it goes up. And this doctor was using the third level, which would, kill me if I took just a tiny bit of it. So when I saw on my last prescription, they actually doubled the type of insulin, but they made a pen that could administer half as much. So I would pretend that I'm doing the same thing, but I'm using much less, way more powerful insulin. But when I saw that number on there, U200, I called my doctor and I was like, this pen, am I gonna die today? Because this pen is not what I normally take. So it was those details that person did, the author, that really brought that story some realistic aspects that have stuck with me my whole life. So you're gonna wanna kind of do that same thing. But this isn't just for how the murder happened. This would be for, like she was saying earlier, if they are a survivor of abuse. You would want to do some behavioral health research to see what kinds of behaviors adults that have experienced childhood trauma might present in a certain situation. If it has to deal with a relationship, people that have certain childhood trauma react very differently in certain circumstances, which could be something that pushes your plot forward. The problem that your main character has, their flaw would be, overcoming these past traumas. So that being said, these research topics could be super vast. There would be no way for me to show you how to research every single topic that might come up, but I thought of a few that might be related specifically to crime. So the first one I'm going to show you is this topic search. Now, the resources I'm showing you are only accessible through our website for patrons of this library system. Anybody that uses a different library system, they'll have similar resources there, but you'd have to contact your library to make sure which ones or what would be a similar one to the kind we offer. However, if you want to check down here, any of the computers we have can access these resources, and you can get a computer user card or just a one-day guest pass to kind of sit down and do some of this research. Also, if something I say is intriguing, but it goes by way too quick, we offer one-on-one sessions with a librarian, and you could literally say, I want to do research on this topic, and within about a week, you'll be assigned a librarian who will sit down and work with you specifically on that kind of research. So I'm not a writer, but I can do research very well, and I spend lots of time reading book reviews. So from our website, we have this Learning and Research tab. If you go to online resources by subject, you kind of get a good breakdown of what you might be interested in. However, these are very topical. To do the more serious research, you kind of have to dig in a little bit further. So I'm going to go to this A to Z list. So now this is every online resource we have. So if you look at some of these, they have tons of different information from magazines, from peer-reviewed articles, all the way down to just historical newspapers, current newspapers. But one that I wanted to start with is all the way down here in T's, and that's topic search. So this is bringing us into EBSCOhost, which is a very academic database. It has several databases compiled within it, and I'll show you in a second how to kind of navigate which ones you'd want to use. But topic search is a really good entry point. The only better entry point you'd have would be a Google search and a Wikipedia article. So, which also, they're not something to shun away from. It's just you don't necessarily want to use that as your credible source, but it's a really good idea if you just have can my character do this? Run it through Google, see what they say in Wikipedia. You'll get some dates, some events, but this part is a little bit deeper. So if I were just thinking, in my story, there are crimes at sea, I could type in sea crime. And my result list isn't going to just be articles like this. It can be specific events that have happened. It can be statistical results. Sometimes there's even photos and videos that come up as your results. But yeah, so we have here results from these things. They're not going to be, my search term was super loose, sea crimes. That could be it could be dumping in the ocean. It could be all sorts of things. But here we see the third result, piracy and armed robbery at sea. Now, we have an abstract. So the first thing you do when you start looking at a result is read the abstract. This will give you a good idea. Is this even in the realm of what you want? You can ditch it, move on, or you can, set it aside. But on this left area, you see the PDF full text. That's where you're going to get to the article. This is where you can see, is this article, it's 12 pages, that's manageable. Sometimes you pull these up and they'll be 130 pages, and then you got to do a little trick. So anytime you're online, if you hold Control and hit F, a little search bar will pop up. And in this bar, you can type any word you want, and it will bring you directly to where that word is in that source. So if you get a textbook,
Control what?
F.
F.
For find, if that helps. So if I put in here, murder, well, there's none. So you can see at the top it says 0 out of 0. So if I was looking for a murder story, it wouldn't be in this resource. But if I just put in pirate, there are 31 times the word pirate is mentioned, and I can jump through this entire article and find those exact things. Like I was saying before, if it's a 12-page article, you might want to just sit down and read it. That shouldn't take too long, but if it was 130 pages, then you might want to go straight to the sections that you want to deal with. As studying history for undergrad, I used that tremendously to cut down my research time. I do not know how people actually did research before computers were their tool. The people that worked at the library just before me used to do reference work without computers, and I don't think I would have chosen this career if that were still the case. So what we can see from just this article is war risk concerns, the forecast for future things, the way ahead. So this is professionals talking about how to deal with this specific problem. If you were in your story having your character on a cruise ship that gets hijacked by pirates, you would kind of want to reference these things, and you could even say, back in the mainland, this is what politicians are doing to try to, alleviate the situation. So that's why I was getting at, anybody could write down, pirates came and took them away, the authorities were mad, but this is how you'll kind of dress that up to make it sound like you know exactly what you're talking about. These stories could very well be real, if not actually pulled from real events. So going back to thinking of topic search, that was just a random topic I pulled up. It was sea crime. So you could have put in, financial crimes, white collar crimes. There's all sorts of great stories happening like right now in the news that would be awesome for a mystery story. We have politicians killing journalists in the West Coast. We have, revolutions happening all over the world for human rights. There's tons of different things you could look into for this. And one topic that I didn't really get into because it's a whole nother aspect is the technology aspect of it. A lot of stories, you're either going to leave out technology use altogether, which I see in tons of movies, or it's going to be integrated so readily that it acts like it's, regular life where we pull out our phones. The joke is Seinfeld would have never happened if they had cell phones. The whole story would have just fallen apart right away. So if you're thinking about technology and you're not someone that necessarily uses it, do some research into some of those topics and kind of see how people use which kind of apps. So we mentioned Reddit earlier. Reddit has tons of topics for writers, how to do character development, specific things, different groups. You could have a group that you don't like on the same exact topic as a group that you do like. So it's just a matter of finding a community of people that will help you along. But I even put that on my little list here at the bottom. Some general websites you could check would be Reddit, writing comments, tips on crafting a mystery. And if you go to this, it just brings up a page. So this isn't even logged into an account. I don't have a Reddit account on this computer, but it's just pages of people talking about this exact topic. So looking outside of library resources is going to definitely help you. But again, this is just random people giving their opinions. If you want to get to something factual, you want to come back to some of these established resources for credible information. So we'll go to some newspaper. We'll go back to resources by subject, and you can see we have different things here, but we need periodicals. So American newspapers, this will give you what's going on right now. A lot of them go back to around 2010. Some go a little bit further, but it's mostly current publications. This historic American newspapers, as you can see right there, 1777 through 1963. So if you want to know for your story, which takes place in the 1940s, how a headline might run if something happened, you can look in there and see actual news reports for different kinds of murders or mysteries that were going on at that time. They might not have reported things exactly how we would. We kind of are very graphic with our news these days, and I don't think that would have flown so much back in time. So this would be a good way for you to gauge those things. There's all sorts of newspapers here, and if you were specifically looking for Greenville information, we have the South Carolina room upstairs, and they specialize in local history and genealogy. Everybody in that department is a wonderful resource to get in touch if that's your case. Most libraries will have something similar, or at least a librarian. So if you're thinking of my story takes place in Alabama, reach out to an Alabama library and ask them if they have somebody who can help you. Librarians are there to help. We're literally sitting around waiting for people to need our help. So the medical databases. I'm going to go back into EBSCOhost, and you can see here it says searching topic search. When I go to choose databases, now you can see this is the full list of different topics. And if I'm wondering what each one has, I can come to this little arrow, click on it, and it will tell you exactly what's in that collection. So let's just go think we're doing a medical crime. Somebody's getting killed in the hospital, kind of like the one I brought up earlier. I would look through this list. We have Alt Health Watch, and this has holistic and integrated approaches to health. So that might be good if my character isn't conventionally happy with the cancer treatment they're getting, or they are questioning, why their doctor did a certain thing. That could be helpful. We could go down and see. So Medline is a very, very complex one for actual people in the medical field. This is how they share information with each other. So you are going to get a lot of that jargon if you start looking at these articles, things that you might need to, have a website with a dictionary up just to kind of understand what you're reading, which might be part of your story. You may have a character that is, pedantic and talks down to everybody. Then he might use these words. So that's one thing to consider. Then we have Psychology and Behavioral Sciences collection. So if I'm dealing with any sort of reference question that has to do with psychology or psychiatry, I always will just check that box. And if you notice, when I check, topic search didn't go away. I can search as many of these or as few of them as I want, depending on my results from my search. But I'll do consumer health. We'll do the ebook collection of consumer health. We can do Medline, and let's see, one more. The Alt Health. So now I will just click OK. The page looks the same. I'm still just in EBSCOhost. However, I've selected those specific databases, and we won't get the topic search results anymore. We're going to get these ones instead. A quick note, instead of just typing your stuff into the search bar and running it, if you look down, there's a few different qualifiers that will get you the results you're looking for. Full text is usually good. Scholarly or peer-reviewed, that's how you're going to get that most accurate information. You can go with publication dates. So if you were looking for how diabetes was treated in the 80s, you can set these publication dates back to the 80s and get something from there. I mean, the technology in the medical field is moving along so quickly. I have a machine on me right now that tells me my blood sugar always, and if it gets out of range, it starts beeping at me and yelling at me. A year ago, I had to stab my fingers every time I wanted to know, and I got like a little glimpse in the dark of what's going on. So it's like, oh, it's 200 right now. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? This thing now tells me. So in that story I was originally telling you about, this device would have really fixed that problem, and that doctor would never have gotten away with what he was doing. But since back then you had to use a full syringe and intravenously put insulin in and all sorts of stuff, then you get, what was that story? Steel Magnolia, where the girl starts freaking out and doing that. That would have been more or less what I'd have to deal with on a daily basis, rather than, oh, I'm getting a little bit low, I should eat some sugar. So I always just carry a little bit of sugar around and insulin, and I'm fine. So that's like the difference in wanting to do the publication date of the resource you're getting at. If I just come up here and just put depression, it gives me a ton of different things that I might be interested in. So sometimes if you're just looking for symptoms, teens, if your character is a teen, if your character is the parent of a teen, these might all help you get into some of that authenticity you were looking for. But we can just go depression and anxiety. So since I searched all those different databases at once, I'm getting back 34,273 results. I can limit them by the date. So the earliest one was in 1957. The latest one was this year. We have the different kinds of sources they come from. We can limit it by all sorts of different things. But just looking at our first set of results, we get very detailed information. This is honing in on a very specific thing. This is not a People magazine, depression is affecting our children because of COVID. This is really gonna get into case studies, clinical statistics from professionals. So if we wanted to, this one is just a scoping review. So we'll take a look at that. We can see, now this abstract is already very large compared to the other one we were looking at. So we can see they have a huge list of references. This is a professional article for a doctor to read. This wouldn't be something that, you know, my daughter has depression, and then you're gonna start streaming off all the things that you find in this article. But in general, if that is the key, that's where you'd wanna go. So looking back to what we were saying, this one is 19 pages, but it's very dense. So if you're doing tons of research, you might not wanna read a full 19 pages on this specific topic, but you can get a couple of those key vocabulary words you were looking for and kind of go from there. And that was just going into medical stuff. So for financial things, we have a little bit less detailed information. I can get you good stock quotes and business profiles, but that's not necessarily what you're gonna be looking for. But business news, the kinds of things that white collar crime goes on, the kinds of things that CEOs might do to their employees that could cause somebody to want to take revenge on said CEO, or, you know, any sort of those plot development things. Financial news can just give you the idea of how they report financial stuff, especially for people who do not own a business, who do not deal with any sort of accounting and I teach a lot of stuff for business resources, and people always ask me if I've started a business before. And I'm like, oh, I'm a librarian. I have no business experience, but I know how to use these resources. So that's kind of one of those things. The legal aspect. Now this is gonna be really hard for anybody. Reading legal terminology is one of my least favorite things to do in the world. I mean, I just don't understand what I'm reading. If it's a law that gets passed and I read it, I don't understand it. If it's how to go about making a landlord pay you the money that they're supposed to, I have no idea how to do that. I had to stumble through that in the last few months, and I still am very lost at what's going on with that. I think I won my case, but I have no way of knowing, like, if they didn't pay me before, how are they gonna pay me now? I mean, you give me a paper that said I won, but what do I do with that? So it's really hard with legal stuff. So we have a couple of different ways you would go about it. Westlaw is a resource you have to be in the library to use. This is the actual record of all court cases that have ever happened in our country. So it can be by state, federal, it can be by case number, by parties included, by type of laws. This is what lawyers use when they go to court. It's very hard to understand, but depending on your story, you know, you can dive in or back off. The legal and government info, so if we go back to resources by subject, we have this law and government. If we click on this resource, it gives us a bunch of different databases that are used to kind of accomplish that. There are legal forms, so if you want to know what affidavit looks like, you can pull that up. If you wanted to see what a real will would look like, or people contesting each other's wills, this is where you kind of find how probate court works and how civil court works, or like I'm learning every day which court does what in general. What's a magistrate's court versus civil court versus divorce court? You can just find that out depending on if your story needs it or not. But that's where you'll basically go for that kind of information. Aside from that, if you're not getting into the details, that might be one of those things where Wikipedia, you know, has the information for you and it's displayed in a little bit more digestible way. The political aspect of things. So this points of view, this resource basically goes over situations that are in dispute right now. So abortion, would be all over. They have tons of things on the pros, cons, what arguments are being made by which people. That's all fine, but it doesn't really tell you about the process of how political events take place. So if in your story, your hero or your criminal is a politician, and you want to know about when certain things get signed, how many people, what's a whip, what's a party whip, you might need to know those things to make your story sound better if you're doing a political thriller. Points of view isn't really going to help you with that. Then you're going to really want to just go to government websites and find out information. Make sure when you're doing things like that, the end of your website isn't .com. So .com means company. They will try to sell you something. At the end, there is going to be a profit made. So if it's, we help writers, come to our website, make an account. If it's a .com, most likely they're going to want you to pay for something by the time you get to the end. .org is an organization. It's like a library. It's a non-for-profit. .gov is a government website. So if you're looking for the facts that can't be really disputed so that nobody argues with you, going to a .gov site and knowing you got it from the government is a really good way to go about doing that. Now, the last thing I really wanted to talk to you about isn't research. It's not a database you would use to find out facts. It's to find out how people are going to view your writing. So, Novelist is a tool that librarians use to find read-alikes for patrons. I really liked this author. Can you recommend me something else? There is a full, complete database that helps you link, and it tells you why. And it uses these things called appeal terms to categorize each type of work. So these words are going to be what you think of your own writing. Do I want my writing to be issue-oriented, plot-driven, world-building? Do I want the pace to be fast or relaxed? Do I want it to be bittersweet, bleak, creepy, darkly humorous, disturbing? All of these words have a very specific reason why they've come up with them, and that's because in mystery, you could go from, a sewing murder all the way down to, a serial killer. It could be very light and cozy to very, very graphic. So these words kind of help you figure out where you want to go with your story. So in those beginning stages, what kind of book are you trying to write? The writing style terms. So this is the way your words, how you share the story with your reader. Are you gritty? Is it jargon-filled? Is it lyrical? I tend to like lyrical books. Every time I put in a book that I've liked, it says it's lyrical, so I'm assuming that's something I should keep looking for. Now, when we actually use this resource, so this is just a page that has the definitions on it. On that table, there was my little novelist flip book. I can't let you have it because it's mine for work, but if you wanted to look through it, it's really good at kind of labeling what age groups would be appropriate for what kind of readers tend to like similar appeal terms. So that's just something to consider. I'll show you really quick. So we're going down to N in that full list. And we'll see pretty quickly that Novelist is actually owned by EBSCOhost as well. It's just part of their great resources for librarians. So if I say I'm looking for, mysteries. It's got some of these predefined terms here that might be of interest. I could just come in here and write mysteries. Now, it's giving me a book title. It'll give me book 32 mysteries. I can then say, I really like this Kurt Hampson. And when I click on his name, it'll tell me The genre, literary fiction, love stories, psychological fiction. Storyline is character-driven. It's a leisurely paced book. The tone is bleak and haunting, and the writing style is a stream of consciousness, stylistically complex. So, if this is what I like, on the side here, it has a pre-made list of other authors that are similar. So if I've read everything by this author, and I would love to write a book kind of like this guy, I can come over here and say, all right, maybe Henry Miller might have something for me. So we can look and see the characters are complex, the tone is darkly humorous, it's disturbing, explicit, strong sense of place. So if you were looking for a nice, cozy mystery, this isn't your guy. We're going in the wrong direction because this is gonna get more and more weird and possibly disturbing. So, and then it gives you a list of the books. So each book has these terms applied to them. Each author has these terms applied to them. So you can see what else do they write or what books are like this one specifically. So if you're looking at a series, but one of the books in the series was a little bit different, look at that book rather than the author, and you can kind of get a feel for how people are using these terms to think about the books they're reading. So it's kind of like backwards research. Instead of just trying to produce something and then see how it's received, look at how other similar things are received and what the criticisms are there, and then you can avoid those pitfalls. So this one I would feel like is really good for grasping what kind of writer do you want to be. So like she was saying at the beginning, you could either choose plot or characters to kind of get your feet on the ground. This would be like, how do I want to write in general? Who's my audience? Who am I looking for to enjoy my works? And then even at the bottom, it says search more, and we get all of these different checkboxes. So we can keep narrowing it down based on what we're doing. So especially if you come up with an idea for a character that is, the story is character driven, and you're not sure what you really want to do with that specific character, you can find stories that also treat their main character a similar way and figure out how they went about doing it. And that way you can also avoid that plagiaristic, I'm gonna write a story that's already been written. You can see like, okay, so I really like this, but I need to avoid being identical to this person. However, you'll see that, like she said, everything's been thought of, so it's just basically your spin on telling the story. And then even if you were doing a memoir type book, these resources would help you understand the context of the things that happened within your own life that you may have glazed over at the time because you were living. So we rarely take time to do research on every little aspect of things that affect us, but if you're telling the story, you might want to make a side note like, actually, the reason why she freaked out about bees is because she's deathly allergic to bees. One time when she got stung, her throat closed and all of these anaphylactis or whatever happens, and it can just help add that level of professionalism. You know exactly what you're talking about. You're not just throwing something out there. So that was the basic aspect of what I have. We do have a resource called the Writers Reference Center. It's not my favorite. I'm not pitching it as in go ahead and use this. You don't have to avoid it. It just seems very middle school to high school level writing stuff. So it will tell you grammatical things. So don't use these words, don't leave sentences on prepositions, things like that, that if you're actually writing a novel, you probably are going to spend a little bit less time worried about, especially in the early stages. That might be something, if you were to be your own editor and you wanted to make sure it comes across at least a high school level, you could go ahead and use that resource. So are there any questions? I kind of just burned through like all the concept of research at the library. Yes? There are actually 30 of them on the table. And then the appeal terms, there are 30 of them on the table as well. The links will not work in paper. But I could share this to anybody's email account that wants it, especially if it's Gmail, then it'll be really quick and easy. But my email address is mkraft@greenvillelibrary.org. So M for Marty, Kraft, my last name, and then @greenvillelibrary.org. And all I'd have to say is, can you send me that page? Or you can ask me specifically about something that is addressing your storyline or your characters. I'd be more than happy to chat with you through email. You could call me, or you could even just set up a Book a Librarian, and in the form, which I'll go over right now, under services, one-on-one help, we call it Book a Librarian. You just fill this out, and then this additional info, you could write, would like Marty to help me do research. You could just say research, and then you'll get one of like 5 of us, but you could, I mean, we're really good at getting back to these. These are one of our favorite things to do. So that's where you can go to get more individualized help. But, yeah.
The book reviews that you had up there, this is kind of getting down to the weeds, I know, but who actually puts in the parameters for each individual book?
So,
Is that a librarian, or do the authors get any input
so
in that?
do you mean like the tone, the storyline? That is through novelists, so their own employees. They were developing this over a long time to offer this service. So it's for librarians that need to do reader's advisory for subjects that they might not be good with. So somebody is taking Publishers Weekly reviews and other reviews, New York Times, and then ripping out all the important words and then putting them through their little formula, and then okay, this one is literary fiction. We know that because all these reviews said so. But if you get into deeper books that are less popular, then the information kind of starts paring down each time, and then you can get to this one is fast-paced and the tone is dark versus something that was way more explicitly said. So I don't know, I'm sure they have librarians working for them, but they wouldn't be doing library work aside from assigning these search terms. So this is basically the same thing as when you search cat food in Google and you get a million different results. There's an algorithm that's trying to figure out which one's the best. They're just adding in that information that's like, hey, this one should come up if somebody searches dark humor. This title should pop up, so somebody did assign dark humor to that title or that author. Yeah.
So are those all traditionally published? And if there's a million books published a year, how many of those would actually go into the database?
I'm not sure what their re-up time period is. They try to stay very relevant because librarians that are using this need to be at the forefront of things. So the more popular the author, the more readily it'll get into this. But do you have a title that you might think is a little bit obscure? Like a less known title or author that you might be interested in.
Try themselves out.
Right, so I don't think anything on here is self-published. I'm pretty sure this is through the conventional publishing houses, and I'm sure there's, like 3 left that are doing it all. So, yeah, it does do some people that are historical, like classic authors, and then other ones that would have like a niche group following, a cult following, but the further I've used this, like the read-alikes, if I go down 4 or 5 people, then I'm getting things where I can't find the books for. So if I'm trying to suggest somebody this book that novelist tells me is perfect for them, and then it's not in any library and it's been out of print, then it's a little bit less useful. But it does go pretty deep. So I think you'll find more things in their collection than you'll actually be able to find in person. If that answers the question.
This is going back to the other section correction.
Yeah.
For the historical newspapers, I noticed it said SC. Do you have?
Okay, let's go back to.
And then you mentioned something about, something about Greenville, but what if we wanted to find historical newspapers from 1850 from a different country or
So-
or something like that?
Our resources will dry up very quickly once you leave the borders. So it's a little bit of a language aspect where we wouldn't buy into titles that our patrons couldn't read.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But there's also just, if it was World War II, you would probably find a good deal of German headlines because it's really important to know how they were reporting things versus how we were, or the Soviet Union. And those might even be translated because they're so useful to that person. But if it was treating Ebola in an African country in 1982, that might be a lot harder to find. You might find something more recent about it that references these older things, but actually finding those would be a little bit more difficult. So you see how it says Greenville News 1999 to present? That's when they made it digitally archived, so you can search it. Before that, you actually have to go upstairs and use microfilm and use the records that the librarians have made themselves. They've indexed the newspaper themselves. So you would say, I think there was this murder in 1962 that happened in Greer. I think the guy's last name was Johnson or something. Hopefully it'd be not Johnson, but then they can, find where they think in their rolls and rolls and rolls of newspaper it might be, and then they'll sit down with you and help you scroll through. So that's why the Greenville one is more specific. But this American newspaper, where is that? 19th century newspapers is really good for some of those older ones. But historical American newspapers will help with a ton of things. So it goes back to 1777. It has publications from every state. Obviously, the more prominent the newspaper, the more likely they'll be recorded. So what's Greer's called? Yeah, the Greer Citizen might be really hard for people in Washington State to find, where we would have our local collection, and vice versa. Us looking up a small town on the other side of the country would be hard, but if we're looking for the Chicago Tribune, that'll be there. New York Times, that'll be there. Washington Post, those types of things. So they'll have some smaller towns, and the way newspapers are going to is they're all being consolidated under larger newspapers. So it helps and hurts at the same time. Some of the smaller ones we don't have access to, but once a bigger company takes over, they tend to digitize everything and then release it all. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to have a much briefer presentation. So far, my favorite takeaways are these. Bad decisions make good stories, okay? And Control F. I mean, those are two things that I learned today that make it worth coming here, right? I hope you have something that stuck with you. I'm going to be talking to you about some things in Microsoft that, I find everybody's got Microsoft Word, but sometimes they don't always know all the features there are to use. If you are a seasoned professional, just bear with me while I go through some very basic things. And if you're a beginner, I'm hoping that the things that I want to show you are going to help you with the physical production of all these ideas that you've just gone through. Okay, so the first thing that you need to know about is, of course, spell check. But the thing is, most of us know that spell check's there, and you've got those red squiggly lines under a word when it is misspelled, okay? But I don't know if you know about the right click. I remember this young secretary when I worked in an office said, Right-click is your best friend, okay? And so if you put your cursor on your word and then you do a right-click, look what happens. The correct spelling of the word comes up. You don't even need to do anything except click on it and it will correct it for you. Everybody know that? Right-click. Okay. Same thing with grammar. It would be a blue squiggly line if your grammar check is turned on your Microsoft Word, and you do the same thing. Right-click, and it'll put the correct word in for you. You don't even have to type it in. Now, this would probably have two things because we've got a singular subject and then a plural verb and plural with there as well. So you would probably have both of those pop up. But it's the same thing. Now, here's the thing about grammar check. It sometimes gives you suggestions for how they would change it. And you really want to evaluate them. When they catch an error like this, when you've left, you've left something out or something's very obvious, that's easy. You just click on it, fix it. But sometimes you really want to look at how they've reworded something. You may not want to word it that way. That may not work for you. So remember that anything that they offer you in the grammar thing is a suggestion that you might want to evaluate. Now, next, synonyms. So for example, I like the book because it is interesting, okay? The kind of sentence you've read in a million book reports, or maybe written that sentence yourself when you were in 3rd grade. Okay, so interesting is not all that good a word, and we want to come up with some other words for interesting. Again, right-click on that word, and look what comes up, the box. You've got synonyms, and you click on that, and it gives you a whole bunch of synonyms. Down at the very bottom, you can even click on thesaurus, and it'll open a box over here, which has even more for you to pick from. I like the book because it is fascinating. Now, 2 other resources that are not Microsoft resources, but thesaurus.com and dictionary.com also, if you're not aware of those, can help you when you're sitting there going, you've used the same word like 50 times. You realize it after you've reread your manuscript and you go, God, I kept using the word interesting. I've got to find another word. Go to thesaurus.com or dictionary.com on the internet and you will get there. Now, another really important tool that I use all the time, and that when it comes to editing, when I'm reading it back, is the read aloud feature. And I thought everybody knew how to use this, but that's one of the ones I like the best. Now, I've got the directions here for you. Click on Review. Okay, so if we go up to the main toolbar in Word, we've got Review. Read aloud, you'd click on that, and you would be able to have the computer read back to you your script as you're reading it on the screen. And let me tell you something. We all know what proofreading is like, and the struggle that you face. You've read this piece probably 50 times by the time you're editing it for the final, right? And you just don't see mistakes anymore. And if you've left a word out, you don't hear it. You just glide right by it. Having the computer read back to you is a fabulous tool. You also can put it in your quick search access bar. Pagination, headers, and footers. I'm going to show you how to do some basics. And they are on the Insert toolbar. So you go up to the main toolbar, click on Insert. Okay, if you want to put a header in, you just go here, you click on that, and then basically the very first template that they give you is for a simple header. And if you click on that, you could, your header goes here, and you could say library class, right? And then that's going to appear on every document. Same thing if you want to do a footer, you just go up here, and I like to have my page numbers down at the bottom of the page. Now, come over here on the toolbar to page number, okay? And if you click on that, it tells you top of page, bottom of page. I always like mine on the bottom of the page. And then it offers you templates, okay? And template number 2 is the one I always like to have my page number in the center of the page. So it's that simple to do headers and footers. And if on your first draft, if you just want to have page numbers so that you can easily find your way through your document, this is how you would do it. Now, if you are a person who is self-publishing and you're doing it through Amazon, you really don't need to worry about doing headers and footers and pagination anymore, because when you use their tool, it will tell you exactly what to put in where, and you just type it in. But if you are a writer who is hoping one day to submit your manuscript to a publisher to get yourself traditionally published, you are going to have to put it in a format that works, that has, on one side you're going to have your book title, you're going to have a header, you're going to have different headers on odd and even pages, and you're going to have pagination at the bottom. I have done this a million times, and I get really good at it. And then the next time I'm ready to publish my book, I completely forget how I've done it. So yesterday, what I did was take the time to go through step by step and write down every step. And I realized that it would take far too long for me to do it in this class. So what I'm going to offer to you is I'm going to make a YouTube video of exactly how to do this, and then it's going to be out there forever so that you can always go back to it. If you forget how to do it, you just go back to that YouTube video and you'll be able to do it. And what I'm going to do is demonstrate how to insert a cover page, how to get to the point where you're starting your number pages on the page where your actual chapter 1 begins, different headers on odd and even pages, and how to break your sections. Okay, so that your first page of each chapter begins on a new page with no header, and you still have a page number at the bottom. It's very important to follow the steps in a very specific order. That's what I have discovered, because if you do them out of sync, you'll end up with a number on, you'll think you're done, and you go, I got it this time, right? And you'll go back to your cover page only to discover that you have a number on your cover page. So if you will, I have a sign-up sheet over there. If you give me your email address, I will put you on my email address, which you can undo from, but don't worry, I don't send that much email. I hardly publish much. And, I have a blog. If I'm lucky, I get 2 done a year. That's it. You won't get a lot of emails from me. I don't do a lot of posting. But I will put you on my email list, and I will send you, as soon as I get this done, I'm going to do it like between tomorrow and Monday, because it's fresh in my mind, and I want to make sure that I get it done when it is fresh in my mind. But for those of you who want to traditionally publish, you really can't submit your manuscript unless it is in that format, and so you want to get it done correctly. Okay, but otherwise, it's very easy to do headers and footers from what I've just shown you, from that insert toolbar and this box over here. Even if you just want to number your pages, that will work for you. Highlighting. Okay, now, in our prep class for this, I was thinking of, like if you want to highlight something on your screen. So for example, let's say I'm not really sure that what I'm talking about is on the home toolbar, but I don't have the time to go do my research at the moment, and I just want to highlight it. We go back to the home toolbar and we hit it with yellow, okay? And that way you can come back and after you've finished writing, because it's very difficult to stop in the middle of when your ideas are brimming and your words are flowing and you're writing, to stop and go look something up can pull you right out of the process, and you don't want that to happen. Use highlighting to just go over the document or go over the piece that you have a question on. Now, another thing that you can do when you do have something that you have a question about is you could go, well, you can also, in highlighting, by the way, over here, you can use different colors for different purposes if you wanted to. If for example, if you're highlighting something that's got to be researched in a dictionary, or just like a word that you want to look up, a word that you want to change, or you want to just define something, you could do that in one color. But if it's something that you have to, maybe you need more research on. But let's say you want to leave yourself a little note. We're going to go to the review toolbar. Okay, you see I'm clicking on review here. And then you can just add a comment. And here I can say, I think this is not, this is on another toolbar. So you can leave yourself that note and close it up, and then you're good. And then you could review your notes all later. Okay, let's get over here. So you can change colors, but you can use the highlighting, especially a blank item that you need to come back in and fill in later. I realized the other day I was going to write about, having students do these experiments, and I thought, oh, I gotta go do some research about what to say about that. And then all of a sudden I realized that was going to stop me, and I only had another half hour to write, and I knew how the chapter was going to end. So I just put XYZ experiment, put it in yellow, and I know I gotta go back and do that another time. I showed you comments. Dictation. Let's say you wrote some handwritten notes, or you didn't have your computer with you, and you actually wrote like 2 pages of text, and you got home, and you're not a real typist, and that's a pain in the neck for you to now sit down and type those 2 pages. You could turn on the dictation feature and just read it in, and it will type it in for you. You might have to go in and do some capitalization. You might have to go in and do, spacing, or you might have to correct a few things here and there, but dictation works, and you can read into it. Linda's going to talk to you about some more features, some more sophisticated programs that do it, but Microsoft Word does it. It does.
I can show it on mine when I get up here.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Saving and backing up. Okay. Microsoft now has autosave on, and autosave, I always have autosave on, but when we were talking about it, Ella said she never keeps it on because once you make a change, whatever was there before is gone. Now, if you're wanting to save something as you're, trying to work out a topic, what you might want to do is save a copy of a document. So if you did a chapter and then you think you need to revise it, save a copy. So I could do a save as, okay? And then I would have that second document to work on if I wasn't sure and I still wanted to keep the original. If you have autosave on and you start editing it, it's gone. What you had on there before is gone. So that's the only bad side. The great side of autosave is if you pull the plug out of your computer, that document is still saved, okay, if autosave is on. So I do use the autosave feature. But if, like I said, if you want to try to experiment with a chapter and make some changes to it, but you're not sure you don't like, you want to save, do a save as first. Okay, and then what else did I show you on that? And OneDrive. Now, Microsoft now you have the ability to save everything to OneDrive, and you could set up your computer to save any document that's in your C drive to also be saved on the OneDrive. And that way, it's always there, okay? The document is always there. Now, cut and paste. Everybody knows how to cut and paste, right? Is there anybody who, because again, I make the assumption that everybody knows how to do that, but sometimes they don't. Anybody need to hear about cut and paste? Okay, then good. We're good with that one. But just so you know, you've got this box over here with the cut and paste, but you can also do a Control C for copy, Control V for pasting. And that, sometimes I find that if I go outside of Word, like onto the internet, and I want to copy and paste something from another location, Control C and Control V works. Because sometimes you'll go into you'll cut something out of a Word document to paste in someplace else, and some other program, and it'll tell you, you can't do it. Hit Control V, and it will paste it in there for you. So Control C, Control V are the alternatives.
There are some great writing applications out there. Firstly, if you don't have Word, or you want to do something a little more basic, Google Docs, if you have a Gmail account, is free. And Google also, for people familiar with Google applications, like they have an equivalent of Excel. They have an equivalent, this is PowerPoint in Google that you're looking at. So, you know, like here's a Google document that's kind of the same as Word. To me, they're like slimmed down and simpler versions. So if you're being overwhelmed by Word, you want to try something simpler, and it's free. The other thing that's great about it is it's all backed up to the cloud. So it's much safer. You know, the reason we're talking about save is that we see and hear from authors, and you see that note, you get that email, and it breaks your heart, and like, I just lost my whole novel, right? And you're like, oh, so save early and often, right? But I wanted to show you Scrivener. Now, there are some other apps out there, but I think Scrivener is really cool. And it's really cool because we talked about doing research and not saving as, and I made some changes to the chapter, and what if I want to change it, and never delete anything. You might write a kick-ass chapter, language, and you say, it's just not going to be right, but I don't want to throw that away. Maybe I'll use it. Never throw anything away. Got Research Link. You might go get pictures of characters, and now you've got your one little book is now 100 files sitting out there somewhere, and maybe a Dropbox folder, and you're getting them confused. But Scrivener is I think it's a great application. A lot of users use it. I'm going to start with you and show you how easy it is to start kind of a new project. And I think Scrivener has a 14-day free, you can try it out. So you can just try it out and see if you like it. So right away, it gave me a little template here, and it gives you instructions on what to do. But what you see here on this left side, instead of just seeing a book, it's giving you all these little templates and places to put stuff. So I've got here a brand new chapter and a brand new scene. And I can start typing, right? Linda's first chapter, and great. And then if I want to, anyway, so this is where I'm going to write, and I'm going to show you a lot about that and how that makes it really easy to organize. But you can see I've got these other things, right? I've got chapters, and I've got places, front matter, notes, research, places to put all of this stuff. So all in one place, I get to have those. I'm going to take you to mine, to a draft I have. So what I tend to do in terms of saving, and we'll talk about that at the end. It also, Scrivener has some nice things about saving and backing up also, super important. But this is an older version of a book I'm working on. Can you guys see it okay? Is that okay? We don't need to read the words so much. Okay, so you can see I've got mine filled out. I've got all kinds of stuff in here. I've got my parts split up into my first part, and we talked about, right? It's actually my first sequence. And then I've got my chapters listed, and under every chapter, I've got the scenes. And I can go ahead and put as much information about them. Okay, this is week 1, it's on a Wednesday. It's gonna be my character, point of view. Next scene, George and Marcus are training, then talk about, so I get to name these scenes. I know what they are. Nobody else is gonna see them. They're never gonna go into my manuscript, but I can easily navigate my entire book super quickly by understanding the chapter, where part it's in, what chapter it's in, what scene it's in. But also, one method, if you guys have ever done any kind of storyboarding, a method that a lot of some I don't know, teachers will recommend, is that you actually throw up notes, Post-it notes, like on a board, as you start thinking of scenes or chapters, and you describe them. And I still do that. I can show you, I have a picture of that. But look, Scrivener lets you do that right here. So it has a virtual corkboard. So I've got, when I start laying it out, and I say, here's my chapters, here's what I want, here's a summary of all my chapters, what's going to happen in it, how's it going to move the story forward, right? Is it needed? And as you build and work through your book, it's easy to get lost, and I can always come back up into here to see, right, to get that higher level view. So I really like being able to use that different view. And then, any one of these, you could go into a chapter and also have the lower level, which I don't use for scenes, but you could also, again, even in the individual scene, it's just showing me the beginning, but you could, again, write whatever you want, write notes. And also for every scene and every chapter, I can write as many notes as I want, is great, about the chapter. And so, it's just, you can see it's so much more rich than having just a Word document here, and sure, Word has comments and stuff, but this is written to be able to navigate a big novel easily, right, and keep notes to yourself, and, in many places. Now, Scrivener, you will never use, I don't use most of it, and most people won't, but you can find your way around and use it the way that you want to. It has all the capabilities of Word. If I want to highlight things in different colors because I want to come back to it, I can probably, I had comments. Sounds like I have comments. I don't know. Can I insert? Insert comments. I don't even use comments, but you could, and you could have somebody else look at it. You have comments. On the individual scenes, you can put icons in. I know some authors that use icons, and different kinds of icons or different color coding based on where it is. If it's a first draft, a second draft, has it been to a editor, does it need rework, and they will just color code their individual scenes that way. So again, it lets you very easily, it lets you go through and find and see what you're doing. You can put, here I have a comment in here, so I used yellow, so I gave myself a comment. I also color code, I color code based on what, like Sally said, anything here I was doing blue to remind myself of a subplot, to see if I was dropping enough clues for my readers. So that's what I did on this old version. So you can see in terms of writing, it has a lot of the features as Word, right? In terms of putting in highlighting and comments, but it doesn't make you do all that other stuff like, I don't have to worry about pages or keeping track of heading formats. Did I put this as a chapter? Because you're naturally writing these things in chapters. Now, let's say the other thing that is super great is moving things around, dragging and dropping. Let's say down here, I ended up writing this and it got too long. I got 5 scenes in one chapter and I wanted to put in a different chapter. So I can just come and say, well, I want to add a new chapter, a new folder. They'll call their chapters folders. I want it to be up here. And I'm going to move in my first 2 scenes. And so now that's as easy as that. Okay, I have my chapter is too big. I've moved the 2 scenes into a new chapter. I'm done. I can rename my new chapter. This is going to be, I do have to go back in and renumber them, but it's going to be chapter 9.5 and whatever it's going to be about. So it's easy. I can reorder entire chapters. I want this chapter to be down here, right? Or I want it to be a subchapter, whatever. I can have as many layers and as many levels as I want. I can do that. So super easy to do that. I wanted to show you, because I told you guys that I can put all of this back matter in, all this other stuff, right? I've got in here, you can use their character. They will give you a character template or not. I don't usually do it. I make my own. So I've got my, come on, guy. I've got my character, a person called Lily. I want her to look like the girl in Killing Eve because she was so evil, right? So I give her in there to remind myself of her, and I, write everything about her. So these are just all my notes, again, about what's happening to Eve. I've got, research, pictures. I'm going to have something happen in San Francisco. That's where I want it to be. So I've got my research. I've got research into robotics, and I write all kinds of crazy stuff. So I've got all kinds of this. I've got my links to all of my research in here, right? It's super easy. Then you might also see deleted scenes. This is what it takes, obviously, to write. I have like almost more deleted scenes than I actually have scenes in the book, right? But they're all there. And if I realize I want something and I forgot it, I can go back in and get it. So I have been using it for a long time, probably 4 or 5 or 6 years, maybe more. But I think I just kind of stopped it where I was comfortable. There's a lot, just like Word, there are a lot more functions. But if you go to there are tutorials online, first of all, and as we showed, if you just go in and follow that initial template, and it's really not hard to get started with. The basics are really easy. Just, it's just as simple as adding in, a new scenes. It's really, I think it's not hard. It's not hard to get if you're familiar with, if you're familiar with working with folders on like some kind of a drive, OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox, and so you're familiar with that concept, I think you can get it pretty quickly. I think you can. I think you can. There's other cool things. I just want to show you again, why do I love this so much? Let me go back to open my project that I just started that has nothing in it. So let's say I decide to write a series. I did. This is my second book. It's a sequel. If I had made all these and I want to restart my character drafts because I want to make sure I remember what my characters were like. This is something that is just super awesome. I can just go in here and copy. If I had, I'm just going to pull anyone here. Here's a deleted scene. And I might say, well, I really want that scene in my new book. Like, how easy is that? Now I've got that in here. So I can have I might have a whole bank of character references, and I just pull them in and start my new book or anything. Yeah, it's really, really, really easy. I love having everything there in one place where I don't lose it. And I find it really good. What I tend to do is I don't make backups every time. So it's got in here settings that are easy to find. So let's say we go to our settings. Let me show you this. Preferences. So I can back up. So I have automatic backups. I only keep the most 5. Every time I close this, it backs it up again for me. Every time I close Scrivener down, it makes an entirely separate backup. I back that up to my computer, but I save my working version to Google Drive. So I've got computer, cloud, everywhere. Like we're all start getting paranoid about this. It will happen to you. So it's that easy again. It's very easy to do. And then I tend to save. Every few months I get a whole new one. So this is my May version. Yep.
When you're done, do you export the manuscript to Word?
Done. Good call. Thank you. One of the things that Scrivener is not so awesome at is formatting. Now it will do quick formats here. You see I've got this formatted there to go to ebook. So what I like to do before I'm going to do any submitting is try to read it. We all want to read our books, but I don't like reading on the computer, so I do an EPUB, and then I send it to myself on Kindle. I like reading then I read it on Kindle. So that works really, really well, but it's not something you'd want to then publish automatically. It's not going to have it may not. I'm still working on it. So I had to use a different software for formatting. We don't have time to talk about that today, but you can easily send it out to Word. So here I am. I can export it to many things, to as a Word document, as Kindle book, as many different things. So it's that easy, yeah. So it's really, so I tend to just export to, when I did my beta readers, you know, everybody is, it's a whole new world and everybody's different generations. I gave PDFs, Google Docs, Word documents, and e-documents to my beta readers. And so with this, I just, bang, 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 I could send it right out to them, whatever they wanted. So I recommend it. It is, because I'm with a Mac, I don't know how this would work on Word. It doesn't have a built-in dictation, but I use the dictation that's built in on the Mac. I also listen to them. It's a good way to catch things. Oh, one last thing here, and I just want to show, it's got a cool thing, which I don't use that much either, but I do have project targets. How do I do that here? Here are your, oh, come on, Linda. Oh, sorry, project. So show project targets. So if you want to get, you can do this in here. I know some friends that use this. So I could say, you know, what's my target for my manuscript? 90,000 words. What's my target for my session? Every day I want to try to write 1,500 words. And then it kind of shows you up here in this little purple that shows you where you are with your daily targets. I myself, that was not good enough for me because every day I'm not, I may not make it. So I had to, I'll show you mine, which are crazy. I use Google Sheets, and when I really have to get stuff done here, I just do day by day, right? What did I do today? How many chapters or how many words? And I get myself, that's how I do it. So if I'm gonna write or edit or get any, but Scrivener gives you a kind of a smaller, so I won't get, I know, I'm a kind of anal or something, I don't know, it's being a data scientist. So I think we got everything there. The last thing I wanted to tell you guys, I like to dictate as well, but I don't like to dictate from my computer, so there are multiple different dictation applications out there. I use Otter, it's called Otter AI. They have a low version that's free, 300 minutes a month. I like it because I can walk around, right, be outside, that's when I want to think, and I dictate some scenes. And for a first draft, it can be a good way to get a lot of words down if you can get used to it. Otter AI.
OTT.
Yes, Otter AI.
And it's
Otter
.ai.
.ai. Otter.ai, I think. We can look here. Let's look. Otter.ai. Yep. So it will do voice to text, and I just send it over to my computer. It keeps your recording around for 30 days on the free plan, so you can also see if it missed anything. I can listen and go at the same time. Yep, and that's pretty cool. So I think we're out of time. Thank you so much. Thank you.